In 1902, a group of Quakers built for themselves a mountain retreat atop a ridge on the edge of the Pocono Plateau. At the center of this community of stately country cottages was built the Pocono Manor Inn. Constructed in 9 different stages between 1902 and 1949, Pocono Manor was a prime example of the era of the grand hotels in the Poconos. Guests partook in the outdoors through hikes and horseback rides, or canoeing on the manor's lake. And in the winter, skiing was pursued on the many miles of trails crisscrossing the woods below the hotel. Pocono Manor would survive into the post-war years, one of the few grand hotels to do so, but as skiing had entered into a more modern era, modern facilities were needed to compete with growing ski resorts now being established in the region. In 1964, lift service skiing began at Pocono Manor with the installation of a J-bar and the cutting of alpine ski trails. Snowmaking was added, and Pocono Manor could boast of being a 4-season resort through the post-war years and would partake in the boom of Pocono's vacationing in the 1960s and 70s. However, with the growth of dedicated ski resorts nearby, Pocono Manor's limited operations began to lose their competitiveness, and the ski area ceased operations in the 1980s. The hotel and resort community were added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1997, and the hotel continued operations, one of the last remaining examples of the Grand Pocono Hotels, until it was destroyed by a fire in 2019, bringing an end to nearly 100 years of continuous operation. Hey everybody, welcome to another Lost Ski Area tour. This is Avery Zucco, and today I'll be taking you around the former Pocono Manor ski area, which is next to the now former Pocono Manor Inn, which unfortunately burned down a few months before this was recorded. You can see the high-rise portion of the hotel on top of the hill there. It's all boarded up because of the fire. And what you're looking at right in front here was the lodge. That cement pad was where the lodge was located. It's since been demolished. It was turned into a private residence at some time after the ski area closed, and now it's gone. So this was an upside-down ski area. The lodge was at the top, and this was the top terminal of the main top-to-bottom lift, which was a J-bar. And I'll get inside the drive house here in a second. It's pretty well overgrown. You can see the size of the trees here that are grown up over the lift line. So this is the top terminal for the J-bar, and this is also the drive for the J-bar. You can see the drive mechanism down there. So this is kind of an unusual lift because the drive is usually at the bottom. In this case, it's at the top. Now, so the story on this J-bar it was installed in 1964 by a company called Larchmont. And Larchmont manufactured J-bar ski lifts in the early 1960s. They only made a handful of these things, and they weren't around for very long. And all the ones that I can find online, or the pictures of these I can find online, seem to have the same configuration where the drive was at the top rather than the bottom. For whatever reason, that's just how they decided to make them. But like I said, not around for very long. Early 1960s, after 1964, they seem to disappear. Incidentally, they also manufactured a single chairlift with a very bizarre configuration for a Scutney mountain in Vermont. You can go and look at pictures of that online. But yeah, not around for very long. I think they made rail car components or something like that before they tried making ski lifts. So kind of a strange, unique ski lift history for this area. And there's not a lot of those Larchmont lifts around. I think this may be the only one that's still left. There may still be one standing at Sweat Hill in Massachusetts, but the only pictures I could find for that were from 2000, so I don't know if that's still around or not. In any case, this is walking down the J-bar line. And these lift towers are really small. I was actually surprised how small these are. I can reach and I can touch the sheave assemblies. So there's only about maybe 8 feet or so up off the ground there. But then these J-bars were pretty small. And then you can see the lift line continues down. It's a very well-defined lift line. And then this is walking over towards the main slopes. So there were 2 main slopes that were cut, and then 2 trails. And you can see some of the snowmaking pipe that they've sort of just gathered here off the side of the trail. They did have snowmaking. I don't know if snowmaking was installed at opening or if it was installed a little bit later, but they did have a snowmaking system. And then this is the one of these slopes. It's pretty well overgrown now. This would have been the more advanced slope down. That was a top to bottom slope, uninterrupted. And then moving over further is a more wide open slope that's shorter. Now the interesting thing is, I guess it's not really a beginner slope. There was a small beginner area up at the top, just like a little open grassy area that had that I think had a rope tow. That was like the beginner area. This was just a shorter slope. This is some of the electrical components for the snowmaking, or they would have plugged in here if they had fan guns or something like that. And you can see that this is a decently steep pitch. Now this slope also had its own lift. It's shorter. It's only about half the vertical drop as the top to bottom one. You can see one of the footings right here. There's a handful of these cement footings along the side of the slope. I guess you could kind of call this like the intermediate slope. It was just shorter, but it's a decent pitch. It's only about 125 vertical feet from top to bottom, though. And I was interested to see if there was anything left of this lift. And what I saw here in the woods, I kind of caught my eye. I saw part of the haul rope, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. The haul rope is still here in the woods, along with these big cement blocks, which I think were the footers for some of the towers. And then I decided, what the hell? I'm gonna go dig around in the woods, and lo and behold, a bunch of the T-bar assemblies were still
right there,
attached to that haul rope.
you can see it. Poma lift.
And so you can see the grip is still there. The whole assembly is still there. So I went looking online, and some people had said, well, there was a rope tow on this slope. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think that they had a Poma lift here. They may have had a rope tow initially in '64 when they opened, but in 1974 they installed a Poma T-bar here, and that was a 125-foot vertical drop T-bar, and I think that was just to service this kind of like intermediate, shorter slope. Now at the bottom of this open area, and I think the reason why this is so nice and open still is because apparently the hotel used this for snow tubing after the resort closed. But at the bottom of that slope, I'm walking down the main slope now, which is more overgrown, and you can't really see it, but on the left there are 2 trail merges from the shorter slope. And so if you ski down to the bottom of that shorter open area, there were 2 narrower trails that went through the woods and then led you down to this longer slope. And those are, like I said, they're more overgrown now and they're harder to sort of see. But it was basically 2 different slopes, one longer, one shorter, and then 2 sort of connecting trails in between them. So there was like 4 or 5 different slopes and trails. So it was a pretty small area, as a lot of these kind of private-ish areas tend to be. But the pitch is actually pretty decent. It's not too steep, but it's not, you know, I was at Tamament before this, and you could see there how it's really very easy. There was actually a decent, you know, it was a decent workout, like a real like solid intermediate pitch. This is looking up that slope, and from top to bottom it's about 250 vertical feet, so you know, it's a decent little challenge, especially if you're a beginner or just learning how to ski. And you could get some decent turns in on that pitch for about 250 vertical feet. So we're at the bottom now. We're near the creek at the bottom, and this is the bottom of the J-bar line. And this is another one of the towers here at the bottom of the J-bar line. I did see some discussion that there may have been another top to bottom lift on the other slope that serviced, that slope may have gone all the way to the bottom earlier before they shortened it. I'm not sure if that's the case or not. I know that Poma lift certainly never went all the way to the bottom. I don't know if they did have a longer slope there at some point in the past or not. I didn't see any evidence that that was the case, however. So now this is the bottom terminal of the J-bar. It's very overgrown. Now this area ceased operation, I think, sometime in the 1980s. It has to have been abandoned for at least,
Time to get to.
I would say 30 years, just given the amount of overgrowth that's occurred since then. This was the operator's shack for the lift that's totally collapsed, and then this is the return terminal, and you can see how overgrown it is. This is the bottom bowl wheel, and there's trees growing right up through the bowl wheel. So it's been out of operation for quite some time. Emergency stop. And then behind that bottom terminal is a creek. This is Swiftwater Creek. And this is the pump house for the snowmaking system. Now, again, so this place, I think they closed sometime in the 1980s. I don't know the exact year on that. They did seem to operate snow tubing on that shorter slope for some number of years, I think into the 1990s, before ending that operation totally. All the pump equipment looks like it's pretty much been taken out at some point. But the piping is still here. I'm not sure what this wheel is from. I don't know if this is part of a lift, or it looks too small. I think it was part of the pump system. And I guess they just drew water right out of the creek here. And so this was a fully private area for guests staying at the hotel. This was something that was pretty popular to do in the Poconos. A lot of these hotels and resorts, they put in little private ski areas. Even some of the vacation home communities put in their own little private ski areas. And so you have a lot of these little areas around the Poconos that sadly, you know, they're abandoned now. But that's just part of the history of these resorts, and it's part of the history of the Poconos. It's something that was really unique to the area. So that's Pocono Manor in ski area, which is in Pocono Manor, Pennsylvania. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it informative. Maybe it brought back some memories. If you'd like to share those, go right ahead and leave those down in the comments. If you enjoyed watching this, I encourage you to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.